Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So as you can probably see from my surroundings, we're back in Vancouver now. I think this is the first talking head video we've ever shot in Vancouver, so this is kind of a new thing for us. We're probably going to try to get some transit related stuff on the backdrop here in the future, but that's to come. If you haven't already, feel free to submit questions for our next Q&A, because I'm sure you might have questions about moving to Vancouver, how content's going to go, etc., the current global situation. So there'll be a link for our latest Q&A down below, and that will be coming out around the beginning of April. So yeah, definitely get ready to check that one out. Today's topic is why Canada has the worst LRVs, the worst LRT vehicles. Now, when I say this, I'm really not referring to Calgary and Edmonton. Calgary and Edmonton do have LRTs, but if we're talking recently, Calgary and Edmonton aren't the LRTs getting a lot of attention. The ones that are the Quebec City Tramway, Gatineau Tramway, the Ottawa LRT, Ion, Eglinton Crosstown, basically the Ontario-Quebec LRT projects that are happening. I'd also kind of argue that Calgary and Edmonton don't really have American standard LRT systems. They don't really run in the middle of the road generally. They don't have kind of such a low signal priority and such, so they're more like regional rail. But anyways, why are trains so bad, you ask? Well, because they're 100% low floor. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about here, let me explain. LRT vehicles typically come in a couple different varieties. Now in the past, you pretty much always had 100% high floor. High floor being, what a subway train would have, where you have a reasonably high, like 4-foot tall platform that you have to walk on to get into a train. Something like the CLRV streetcars in Toronto would be high floor, 100% high floor. So you can have high floor vehicles with low platforms like curb height or 1 or 2 feet. It's just that those vehicles are going to have some stairs that you have to climb up as you get into the vehicle to get up to kind of the main height of the vehicle. So for a long time, all of the LRT systems in the US and the rest of the world were pretty much all 100% high floor. Obviously, there's some benefits to having low floor vehicles, especially the fact that you don't have to build these large platforms to basically have boarding happen. Also, because for a lot of these new urban LRT systems, primarily being built in the United States at the time, low floor vehicles made sense. And I should be fair, a lot of these vehicles are derivatives of trams from Europe. Essentially, the benefit is that you can, instead of having this high platform in the middle of the street, it's just like a raised curb, essentially, if you want to have level boarding. And so obviously low floor vehicles make a lot of sense. So now, why is 100% low floor bad? What is the alternative? So essentially, some cities with LRT systems, two of the best examples I can think of are Seattle and Portland, cities we've talked about relatively recently, have 70% low floor vehicles. So what does that mean, 70% low floor? And why do I think 100% low floor sucks and is dishonest? Well, essentially what the Siemens vehicles that are 70% low floor look like is they have a flat kind of center module. So they're typically made of 3 modules. The end modules are large, and then you have a shorter middle module. And so what you have is both end modules are about 50% high floor and then 50% low floor. And so you have about 70% of the vehicle, because the entire middle module is low floor, that is low floor. So essentially, if you want to go from that low floor portion to the high floor portion, where the cab is as well, you have to climb a couple steps, similar to how you would have to climb a couple steps to get into a high floor streetcar that's boarding at ground level. Now, all the doors on these cars are located at the lower level, which means that you have 4 double doors per side of the vehicle where people can board and access seating and such. There's no doors at the kind of very ends of the vehicles where the high floor section is. So, of course, as I mentioned, part of these vehicles are high floor, so hence they're called 70% low floor. Now, the vehicles that we have in Canada, at least on our new low floor LRTs, are all 100% low floor. You have the TTC streetcars, the new ones, those are 100% low floor. The Ion LRT, as well as the Eglinton Crosstown and Finch LRT, 100% low floor. The proposed Green Line in Calgary would be 100% low floor most likely. The Valley Line in Edmonton is 100% low floor. The proposed LRTs in Quebec are 100% low floor. Now, what's the issue here? Well, the thing is, we pretty much have only 2 LRT models for low floor vehicles in Canada at the moment. The Alstom ones, which are being used on the Finch West LRT, I believe the Huron-Ontario LRT, as well as the O-Train in Ottawa. And then we have the Flexities, which are what is used on the TTC streetcar, Eglinton Crosstown, and the Valley Line. The reason these vehicles are called 100% low floor is because the low floor section extends the entire length of the vehicle. So if you're going into the operator's cab at either end of either the Flexity or the Alstom Citadis Spirit, you basically are just walking on the same level you were through the rest of the train. So the marketing material argues that that is, more accessible and better, and of course more accessible, something we're definitely fans of. More accessible is fantastic. That gets thrown around and kind of misconstrued as these vehicles are easier to access, particularly for people with mobility devices. The reality is that's really just not true at all. These 100% low floor vehicles have huge protrusions, essentially, where the wheel wells are for the bogies. Imagine most buses. When you kind of enter, you have these big, high, raised areas where the wheels are. Now, it's very similar in these LRVs, except since the entire bogie turns like this, the wells are gigantic, and it's actually usually a very narrow, one-person wide area between these 2 seating areas you have on this vehicle. And so what that essentially means is that anyone with a mobility device really can't get in at the end sections because there would be no room for them, and they can't navigate the actual length of the vehicle because these sections are far too narrow. So essentially, you don't actually have that much of an improvement for people with mobility needs. Even further, the vehicles are not even 100% low floor because the section where the wheel wells are is actually raised up about a foot. And so that's not low floor, that's elevated by a step. And so these vehicles are not great in that sense. So you've heard all of this and you're probably wondering, Reece, why are you complaining? Yeah, it's kind of weird and it's an odd marketing term, but what's the negative of this really? And there's a lot of negatives. The main negative I see is that this super tight section is really not good for passenger flow. So when you think of using these kind of LRV vehicles on something like the Ottawa O-Train or the Eglinton LRT, when these systems get really crowded, it just sucks if you're standing anywhere near the seating area that I just mentioned and you have to get off because you have to really squeeze by other passengers. Even worse, the LRTs we're using on Eglinton have those single doors at the end, as I mentioned. But if you actually count up, that means that they have an entire one less double door than the LRVs used in Seattle and Portland. Despite this, the LRVs that are used in Eglinton, the Flexities essentially, are quite a bit longer. They're 30 meters long rather than about 25 meters long. So if you look at a big long train of like 100 meters or 90 meters, you have significantly less doors and less passenger circulation, which means that on a high frequency service like the Eglinton Crosstown, people getting on and off is going to be severely constrained, and that's just going to slow down service and mean that dwell times, basically how long you're sitting at a station, is longer. Now, as I've mentioned to many people kind of in casual conversation, it doesn't need to be this way. While I do think that 70% low floor vehicles make the most sense, especially in a rapid transit type situation, other cities have 100% low floor LRVs with much better designs. If you look at what a lot of cities using modern Alstom vehicles have, besides Ottawa, who's had a ton of problems with their vehicles, you'll see that the design actually really does resemble the Flexity. But instead of having one single double door per the sides of the middle modules, you have 2 sets of double doors. And then at the ends, instead of having single doors, you have another set of double doors. That means that the entire vehicle, 30 meters long, has roughly 6 double doors instead of just 3, so twice as many doors overall, which means a lot more in-out passenger movement. One of the lines that has that is the New Sydney LRT, which has plenty of problems. Don't get me started on that, but the vehicle design is better. So that's mostly my complaint. I think that we kind of got bad LRVs. The design sucks, and I'm just not sure why it seems that everything we get in Canada often feels like it's a whole step behind what other countries, particularly in Europe and Asia, are getting. Now, you might say, oh, we just have less experience, but the companies making these vehicles, Bombardier and Alstom, have built good LRVs in other cities, as I mentioned. Pretty much every European tram system has better LRVs than what we're getting in North America. As well, some of the systems in the United States, like Portland and Seattle, who are using the Siemens S70s, are also getting better LRVs. So I just hope in the future, when these systems are being designed, we think a bit more about the vehicles and about the circulation and try to avoid taglines like 100% low floor and, super modern, because what does that even mean? Anyways, guys, thanks for watching the video. Thanks for, listening to my rant. I wanted to make a video about this for a long time because I think the design of the vehicles we are getting is flawed, and unfortunately we have ordered a butt ton of them, and so we're going to be getting more and more for quite a long time. And I just hope that when we order more in the future, maybe in a decade, we make a smart decision and get better vehicles. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.